just to look at it from critically, how do you look at the whole structure of cinema which has changed, this OTTs, and which format do you like the most personally? Like, you want to see your film theatrically, or you're okay with OTT as well?
See, every filmmaker worth their salt would want to see their film in theatrically. That's a given. But I feel OTT has definitely democratized viewing, democratized the way films are funded. Narratives have changed, narratives have evolved. There is a lot of freedom in terms of how you can be very immersive, you can be expansive in your characters. Even subplots get a lot of things. So that way I think it really helps, because filmmakers like me, instantly I get to have my stuff seen by 200 countries in one instance. So that is a very good change. Because see, like a film like Gili Puchi that I mentioned earlier, I couldn't have made a theatrical out of it. Nobody would pay for it. Nobody would, I don't know, want to go to a theater and see it. So yes, I got to say those narratives. If not for OTT, it wouldn't have been possible.
The craft of storytelling is more important than the messaging, because sometimes it also happens that some films are very heavy in their political messaging and survive through the morality of few public, but in terms of craft, these some of the films are very weak. So how do you resolve this dilemma of putting the right politics and as well as making film which is aesthetically pleasing?
See, first of all, the idea, the definition of entertainment is a little lopsided. Because traditionally the idea is that escapist cinema, dimag ghar pe rakh ke jao, all of those connotations are applied to entertainment. But it could also be, stuff that's engaging, that's motivating, that makes you think and ponder, that makes you question, that makes you think about things that differ in opinions. It could want to maybe talk about a new culture that you've not known. It could talk about various things, gender, sexuality, and all of these things that could matter. And it could mean that it provokes a certain feeling in you. It may be not always be ha ha ha, but it could also be something that you go home and you think about it. So that is one example that how, like, even if you look at Swades, that film, I mean, at that time I really loved it. I now have certain issues with it, but even that could be like, it wasn't a box office success, but it made you really want to go back and watch it. And it did bring change where many people who came back.
Many wrong people came back. But yeah.
I so agree with you.
Your recent Made in Heaven.
I think I just hit my Achilles heel right here.
Sorry?
I hit my Achilles heel.
Oh, okay. Hi Neeraj.
Hi Anurag. It's nice to meet you in a formal setting.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I was thinking about this session last night, and I remember that in 2008 or 9, I was in this very famous vlog at that time of cinephiles named Passion for Cinema. And at that time, you used to write for that blog.
Yes.
And
yes.
I was a commentator on, like, comment section guy on the blog. And
even I was a comment section.
I
guy
also
at that
like,
time,
and
yeah.
I also used to troll people on comments. So maybe I trolled you as well at that time.
I must have trolled you back as well, I'm sure.
So at that time, I mean, it was a very interesting time, and we also made a film together, not together, but for a competition. It was a 1-minute filmmaking challenge competition, and you made a film, I think on 15th August or 26th January.
Don't remind them of that. And
we should remember.
It's a very embarrassing shot. And you were also on the thing?
Yeah, I participated, but I lost, and your film won at that.
Oh wow! I had no idea.
Yeah, I remember because of that, because I lost. So yeah,
I mean, we met many years back, but I didn't know what this connection. Wow.
So yeah, so the point of reminding these things was that it's been a long journey. 2007-8. You were as a writer trying to analyze film, trying to decode film, and I was also following you on Facebook, where you used to write a lot about world cinema, your favorite filmmakers, like how you used to watch 8 hours film of that director. I forgot his name, the Tarkovsky from
Bellatar.
Bellatar, yeah. So and now we are in 2023. In between, made so many great, remarkable work. So if you reflect back on your journey, how do you see how, in fact, I'm very interested to know about the style as a filmmaker style? Do you think it has evolved into something else, or I mean, it has been a continuous experimentation?
I mean, I actually haven't had a very prolific career in the past 10 years that I'm here. No thanks to my imposter syndrome and depression that I battle with. But that's another story. But I think I made one feature film, couple of shorts, couple of TV shows, and commercials. So yeah, I mean, I remember what you're referring to at a point where I think my induction into cinema or my orientation into cinema precedes me actually joining the industry. It was way back when I was actually writing on this blog that he mentioned. I used to write world cinema reviews. I remember writing about Fellini's Eight and a Half and Haneke's The White Ribbon and Satan Tango.
Keselowski.
Satan Tango, which is Bellatar, this Hungarian filmmaker, art house filmmaker, who makes films which have an average shot length of 4 minutes, and they are black and white, and nothing happens for a while. The camera doesn't move, the people don't move, and it goes on forever. And this is a seven and a half hour film, and I watched it twice to review, and there was so much of passion that you feel like doing so much with it. And I mean, I was writing and also trying to learn from it. It was more like academic insight into these films. And by the way, my two cats are called named after these two filmmakers, Fellini and Bellatar. So one is Fellini, one is Bella. uh, from there, here I am after so many years, making extravagant wedding episodes of rich people. So my journey has been quite something. Uh, Throughout, I think my fulcrum of things that I'm part of has remained the same: gender, caste, sexuality, denial. These are certain themes that I like, and I've been part of it. I think that has not changed. What has changed is, I think, uh, so I've actually rooted the fact that I've actually haven't been into cinema from an academic standpoint of, because I'm a very academic sort of person, and I miss the fact that I didn't go to a film school. He has, but
Sadly.
so I used to feel that I'm lacking something. So I really self-taught myself. I got into films because I started assisting Anurag Kashyap on Gangs of Wasepur. So 2.5 years on that film was my film school. And at that time, actually, I met a nice gentleman, a filmmaker, who told me a very valuable piece of advice, which also is going to scare some of you, is that passion is finite. Because we assume that our passion is going to be there forever, and we're going to forever feel this rigor. But as per law of physics, it dissipates over time. So that really pushed me into wanting things happen, because when I entered industry, I had a corporate career before this. I was a brand manager. From there, I just suddenly quit, yada yada, and then here I am. So if I reflect back, I think I've made very less amount of movies and short films, but I think I've at least stuck to what I really believe in. It's not about, many people ask that, like people, Anurag makes fun of me that he says that I haven't made a film in 10 years. He says I'll only make a film when it goes to main competition in Cannes. But the point is that, I actually want to make films that it speaks to me, and it should just augur well with my politics. And yeah, so in terms of technical style, I think I missed doing a lot of visual, audio-visual impetus in Masan. I wish I had done more. So now I actually went with vengeance. And like, there's a film called Gili Pucci that I made. It's part of this anthology. I don't know how many of you seen it. But that one, I studied Fincher. I studied so many filmmakers, and I tried to like speak a lot of cinematic language. Oh, I'm so sorry. It must have been terrible for you to like translate all the bullshit that I've been spewing here. Yeah, I'm done with my long, winding answer.
So this quote about passion is interesting. I also have a quote about passion because I worked in Bombay for some time, and also with some filmmakers who didn't pay me. So I wrote one day in my diary that passion is oppression, because they used to do it in the name of passion for cinema. So, but if you talk about these passion, these blogs and these, there was a time when like more Fight Club was also there by Somain, and there was a bustling time of cinephiles when different kind of films were being made. There was a lot many independent filmmakers who were making films. Even from FTI, there were different kind of cinema, alternative cinema, which is getting produced. But over the years, that definition of cinema has also changed since the I think when OTT platforms came, then everybody jumped into that, and it became more like corporatized, and there were things which you can say, there are things which you can't say. So initially there was a hope from the OTT that it might be somewhat more free, more freedom. But recently what I'm seeing, that it has also become just like a clone. And on the top of that, the narrative of these films are also very much similar in a way that they approach any theme, especially in the episodic narrative. It became very similar. And then there is also a different kind of content driven cinema, which is mostly made for the sensibility of dominant caste people. If I look at it, like they represent their culture and everything, which borrows from the independent filmmaking and also some form of commercial cinema and somewhere in between them. And lot many independent filmmakers are also now looking for these OTT release and everything, and that whole space of making films outside the domain of these things became diminished over the years. So which is also okay, because hard hitting films are hardly hit films, so they are also need to find some venues to support themselves, which I don't blame them. But just to look at it from critically, how do you look at the whole structure of cinema which has changed, this OTTs, and which format do you like the most personally? Like, you want to see your film theatrically, or you're okay with OTT as well?
See, every filmmaker worth their salt would want to see their film in theatrically. That's a given. But I feel OTT has definitely democratized viewing, democratized the way films are funded. Um, Narratives have changed, narratives have evolved. There is a lot of freedom in terms of how you can be very immersive, you can be expansive in your characters. Even subplots get a lot of things. Um, so that way, I think it really helps to. Because filmmakers like me, instantly I get to have my stuff seen by 200 countries in one instance. So that is a very good change. And also that I think, because see, like a film like Gili Puchi that I mentioned earlier, I couldn't have made a theatrical out of it. Nobody would pay for it. Nobody would, I don't know, want to go to a theater and see it. So yes, I got to say those narratives. If not for OTT, it wouldn't have been possible. While saying that, I also feel that I I feel the corporatization of it all somewhere feels a little because everything is looked from a statistical point of view. What is going to work? What is not going to work? Even so, any script or any language, this thing is a creative medium. So you cannot quantify creativity. You cannot say that this is what is going to work. This is what is going to predict. And in terms of the same thing, like if you see, there are bits and falls of both of them. Both can coexist. I feel in terms of OTT space also, not just OTT, general, the censorship that you see that's happening with our industry. Uh, what happens is that there is a public fear of, say, something that hurts my sentiment, or this thing that, okay, this community has oppressed me, this community has said something, this person has said something. Now this public fear goes into the cinematic world, where it comes in the form of censorship, where before even going to the censor board, there are multiple levels of censorship that are happening right now as we speak. The first level is writers. We're sitting in a room, we're sitting in the writer's room, and we're wondering, maybe this will hurt someone. We can't do. I think this may not fly. This audience may not understand. So we are cutting down everything. We're making a sanitized version of what our voice could be. And from there on, we go with a lot of math done around it, trying to make it work with all the high beats that you have let go because of the fear that it may not pass. It may get stuck at the censor board, or someone will get offended, or the producer may not like that it is such a incendiary kind of a script. From there, the second level happens where producers, they will be even more afraid. They'll say it's already cut down. From there, there's further more funneling down. And when the actors come on board, even they will have issues that maybe I don't want to play this part. Maybe this is not good for my image, or this will happen. So there are multiple levels of censorship that are happening that is curtailing the voice. And I feel, there was a interesting thing that happened in London where the filmmaker uh, was protesting. His now actually it's very confusing. You may call it art, you may call it stupidity, because this filmmaker's film is called Watching Paint Dry. So he shot an 10-hour film where he just shot a wall, he just painted it and he just shot it getting dry. And the censor board there had to just watch it. And that was his thing. He just wanted to so sadly we can't do that. Sadly we can't. So coming to theatrical, I feel it's an exciting time to be in. We have a lot of big blockbuster films, and these are required. They have to be. And actually, I don't feel entertainment should be an enemy of art or vice versa. We should have all kinds of films. We should celebrate all kinds of films. And I love it that that films like Jawan or Rocky Rani are doing so well, because maybe independent films get funded because of that revenue coming in. It is encouraging time to put in, and maybe we'll be seeing in theatricals. But the point that I sort of worry, I may be wrong, I hope I'm proven wrong, is that this whole mega blockbuster thing is leading into a thing where extreme machismo is the juggernaut that drives any of it. And women have taken so long to actually get there and make their, and not just women narratives, many queer narratives, a lot of these narratives will get sidelined because if a mega blockbuster it has to be only an action-driven male bastion of uber masculinity, So, and it normalizes it because it makes it aspirational, it makes it cooler. So that's my worry, per se, because I hope, will there ever be a Hum Aapke Kaun again to become a blockbuster? Or there's going to be only action films that are going to be yeah.
This is an interesting point that you said about entertainment versus some form of these social values that can be the part of cinema. And this tension has always been the part of cinema since the beginning. If you look at the Soviet montage film or Einstein montage film, or from the New Wave cinema, which were also French New Wave cinema, or Taiwanese New Waves, Iranian New Waves, or all this Italian neo-realism cinema, they were exploring these themes. But there is also, like, some people think cinema is a form of entertainment and everything you have to do is to entertain the masses or whatever public, and there is other form that it can be an important socio-political tool. So I would be interested to know, how do you think of cinema in that form? Is it the craft of storytelling is more important than the messaging? Because sometimes it also happens that some films are very heavy in their political messaging and survive through the morality of few public, but in terms of craft, these some of the films are very weak. So how do you resolve this dilemma of putting the right politics and as well as making film which is aesthetically pleasing?
Well, that is something that I actually struggle with also. But how I navigate through that, I feel, like I said, entertainment and art are not incongruous. They can also coexist. You can make films that see. First of all, the definition of entertainment is a little lopsided, because traditionally the idea is that escapist cinema, dimag ghar pe rakh ke jao, all of those connotations are applied to entertainment. But it could also be, stuff that's engaging, that's motivating, that makes you think and ponder, that makes you question, that makes you uh, think about things that differ in opinions. It could want to maybe talk about a new culture that you've not known. It could talk about various things, gender, sexuality, and all of these things that could matter. And it could mean that it provokes a certain feeling in you. It may be not always be ha ha ha, but it could also be something that you go home and you think about it. Like there are many people here who actually When they watch a great film, it stays with them for 2 3 days, and it does change. Society does change because of even entertaining film. Like one anecdote that I remember is my mother. She saw Santoshi Mata movie, and for over a decade she's been doing the Somvar Vrat, and I don't know why she did it. Like, I mean, uh, for so you can see, and also that the sense of um, so that is one example that how, like, even if you look at Swades, that film, I mean, at that time I really loved it. I now have certain issues with it, but even that could be like, it wasn't a box office success, but it made you really want to go back and watch it, and it did bring change where many people who came back.
Many wrong people came back. But yeah.
I so agree with you. So I feel in that, and also, there's this thing about how we feel message cinema or anything. I feel we should, firstly, if I have to go back and talk about certain thing, that a lot of people say that I'm apolitical. I actually don't understand how can you be apolitical, because in our country, in India, you're either deriving benefits and mooching off from a privilege of being a certain community. It could be caste, gender, sexuality, religion, a lot of these things. So, and it is somewhere also state intercepted. So you are deriving the benefits of it. You could be blissfully unaware of it. You could be totally oblivious about it, but it does exist. Even if you don't believe in it, it does exist. And the other half of that binary are people who are denied of these things, and you don't get those privileges. And together, you form democracy. You form, the two sides of this binary help form democracy. So how can you say you are apolitical? Our mere existence as Indians is political, because so from there, that point, I feel everything I do have to has certain kind of, because it's in our being. So I don't have to craft, oh, I have to put something political in it. uh, yeah, I mean, some of you might say made in heaven. I get it, like, I buy that criticism, that it may seem like every episode has had that one thing, but for me, I feel I don't want to be that person where, so I feel narrative above politics. That is what I've learned from many of the masters, especially Satyajit Ray, where I feel uh, your voice and your craft and your politics cannot supersede the narrative. If it does, if my films, my politics gets bigger than my narrative, then I'm a 2 hour newsreel. I am at best, I'm also a propagandist. Even if at a good cause, I'm still a propagandist. Because cinema has to be art. It has to say it in a certain sense. It has to have a technical um, dexterity to it. It has to have flair to it. It has to have a kind of storytelling. So, and it did happen, like for many years I toured around. For some reason, I wanted to do a film on farm crisis and farmers and the suicides. For 3 years, I toured around India, and I was so gung ho about doing it. And I wrote something, and I made my friends hear it, and I chucked it after 3 years because I realized that I was too passionate about the politics, but the story was not making sense. So I never want to ride on the coattails of making something that is socially relevant or important film or a message film. I want to be judged for my craft, and I want to be seen, not be given pats on the back for making something important. But if my craft is weak, I would like to be called out.
Interesting that, like, to come to your recent Made in Heaven. Um,
I think I just hit my Achilles heel right here.
Sorry.
I hit my Achilles heel.
Oh, okay. So, especially the weddings in popular culture, they are projected in certain ways, especially in these post 90s films like Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, Karan Johar Universe. In fact, so many of the weddings in India started mimicking the aesthetics of the wedding that were being shown in the cinema, and cinema has always played an aspirational role in romance, in marriage. In fact, I remember when I was in the college, thanks to Karan Johar, I used to think that the road to romance goes through a cringe shop named Archie's Gallery. So, so, it has an influence. Pop culture has a big influence on your
Zoya will
aspiration.
be happy to know this.
so it has an influence on people, and they mimic those and make them as their aspirational goal. And so there was a certain kind of wedding and everything which was happening all the time that we see in the popular culture. But your recent show broke that tradition, and you introduced Ambedkarite Buddhist wedding, which many people in India were not aware of, that it happens. Even the many Dalits from the northern India were not aware that this kind of wedding is also possible. So this becomes a very revolutionary frame in itself, because it generates a new kind of aspiration. So I really want to understand, while you're making that that episode, what kind of conversation were you having in your head?
Actually, it came from like I think Zoya and the writers Alankrita, Rima. They wanted to have a conversation about this in one of their episodes, and when they brought me in, we had a long chat. I mean, I don't think they knew. So Bollywood is quite unaware of caste. They are not caste blind. They don't know caste. They only understand class. Um, so uh, yeah, many times they actually mistake. That happens to a lot of people. They mistake caste as class. Like the घर पे जो बर्तन हम अलग रखते हैं staff के लिए, people think it's class. It has come from caste. Anyway, sorry for the digression. Uh, with this episode, I actually also wanted to start a narrative where, so if you look back from the cinema that was and all the stuff that you've seen, there are a handful of films on Dalit narratives, and they're always seen from a Savarna savior complex gaze. You know, you'll always see us as subjects of oppression, subject of state subjugation, but we are never fully blown characters with blood and with skin and with a lot of flair and with a lot of things that mean like what sort of ice cream I like, what sort of movies I like, what is my take on things, where's my agency. So so they're always shown in a particular society, in a particular thing. So that was also had to be broken because we're not just poor people who wear half dhoti and sit in the sun and yell. We also sit here like we speak like the way everyone does. So that also had to be happen. And in this wedding, actually, so it's a very interesting story because as I grew up, so my sister's wedding, I did not want to go because for the long time of my life, I've been passing off as a Savarna. I was too scared to admit to my caste identity, and it has created a deep impact in me. The imposter syndrome that I told you, stems from there. The insecurity, all of it comes from there. To live a life for such a long time, it did something to me. Um, with But then I thought that if I go to my sister's wedding with this Buddhist wedding where you'll also see Ambedkar photo, if my friends come with me, they will know, and I'll be found. And I felt so ashamed that I don't want to go to my own sister's wedding. And from there on, I think I found courage. And even during Masan, um, a little digression, but like even while I was making Masan, I was in Banaras, and for some reason, all of these people were so much in love with me. They would open their homes and they would want me to shoot. And if I even speak of money, they'll get offended. That is the kind of love they were giving it to me. And I was like, what if they know? All of this is going to go away. And I live with that fear. Like my best friend Varun, who was a writer, even he did not know. So this fear stays with you. So that I had to like exercise those demons somehow or the other. And I did so gradually. But in this episode, I put a lot of myself in it. Like if you see the brothers track is actually me because many years back on Twitter, actually, because of something, I think you all know how I proclaim my identity on Twitter. So after that, Bombay Times did a long piece, and I didn't realize it was going all India. And I was petrified for 3 days. Like I couldn't go out or whatever. Uh, so a lot of my extended family, colleagues, and cousins and everyone would take pride. That Masan filmmaker. That's my cousin. That's my this thing. And most of them were passing. Most of them were hiding. Most of them were masquerading. And once that news piece story came out, I inadvertently outed all of them, and they were not happy about it. And it is fair that so it's a very complex situation. What do I do? What was right? What was not? And even my passport still carries the name Kumar. Because my father said, yeah, put Kumar, and now I reclaim my last name as Ghaywan. So all of those came in, and then I thought, okay, since I'm so petrified of this Buddhist wedding that I've seen in my family happening, but I've never been able to, let me just give it a lot of, let me show it with a lot of aplomb and flair, and make it the best wedding. So that was the idea, and I pushed those limits, and I said that do not compromise on anything. Like some of the minutest detail that nobody knows, like the Mangal Sutra is made by Bulgari. So I was like, okay, they have to get as much great stuff that they could. And also, about talking about the wedding landscape as such, like I feel a small thing about like colors palettes, if you see in weddings, they've all become pastel. And pastel is such a colonial fixation. What happened to saturated colors? What happened to the nice red? What happens to the right bright greens? All of that has gone. So I also had that thing that, because we don't see that anymore. And in this wedding particularly, there was a lot of seeding in that I did, which I think you must have cracked one of these, but the walk into the water. And I couldn't remember why I was, like, to production, I was telling them, I have to find a water body. It has to be around a water body. And I think it was because it's a very subtle homage to Chowdhury Tank. The eponymous like event that happened when Ambedkar took many people to have water for public consumption, and they were booed away. They were put in jails. So it was sort of that. So in more ways, I think it is my, yeah, sorry, I got carried.
You talked about very interesting that access to spaces kind of thing when you were shooting in Banaras, and you are scared that these spaces might not be accessible, which is very true for many creatives who are working and marginalized creative, because they might not be welcomed at certain spaces. So there is a fear even in that process of Reiki and everything, that maybe like they are talking very sweetly to me, but there might be chances when they get to know the mood changes. So there is a fear within that creative setup as well, which I also see, like for example, even the YouTube vlogs, these white vloggers, when they come to any places, they are welcomed everywhere. They can shoot, go into any house they want. But if there is a black creator, then those spaces are not accessible. The people are not going to seem kind of friendly, or they are not going to get the content that they want to produce. So that is there, which I wanted to say. But it is, I also wanted to know how did you, since you said that people in the Bollywood doesn't know about caste, and I also experienced it once while I was giving an interview at ad agency, and they said, what else do you do? I said, I also write on Dalit issues. Dalit, are do they exist in cities? Man, yeah, man, they do exist in cities. So so that is the level of understanding. So in that scenario, how did you make them understand the nuances of how the cast operates, especially with the actors? Like they have to act, and they are from the privileged caste, the actors. So what was that process? How did you make them understand that, how it functions, how it happens to your team as well, your assistants, your cameraman, and how did that conversation happen?
See, like I said, Bollywood is not casteist. It's just that they're ignorant about it. But when I spoke about, explained to them the nuances, and I took them into a lot of things like how it happens, they were very welcoming, and they didn't want to leave any stone unturned. Really thanks to Zoya and Rima, who were part of the showrunners, because they really made a point that, this wedding has to look the best. even though they also had other episodes that they were directing and they wanted, but they thing was that, we want to show it the best way, and nothing was compromised. And like, uh, it's sort of lonely for me to be here in this industry, to be literally the only Dalit. Okay, and I want to give you a context of how it feels like. Uh, because I actually don't have any reference point. I don't have people who my own people who I can refer to. Like so many of my filmmakers go back and you watch yesterday's cinema and you have a reference point and there are no names or nothing. Now, one example that I keep telling that you might wonder about, like in all of history of Hindi cinema, all of it, okay, there have been 4 or 5 films that have been made on Dalit narratives made by Savarna filmmakers. And all of these 70 years now, there has been no single Dalit person, okay? And you look at the statistics, or even a tribal person, in front of camera, behind camera, not a single artist. But here, actually, if I ask you, would you name any black artist? You'll have 100 names popping in your head right now, okay? And uh, but if I told you that, there is only one director called Jordan Peele, who is the only director, black director, in all of Hollywood, everybody is white. Imagine that person's plight, that he has no reference point, no fellow people he can make films with. And coming back to the same argument about this thing, now look at the statistics. Okay, I might be wrong, but I'm quoting the last census. 16.6% Dalits. Roughly together, if you make Dalits and Adivasi, it will be 25% population. In America, you see how many black people are there in Hollywood, how many films and how many things that they're creating. That population is 16%. Black population in America is 16%. Here you have 25% of population that has been completely removed. There is not a single person. The only person that has been is, who's posthumously known, is lyricist Shailendra. Posthumously. So it is extremely lonely, and you don't have. So it took a long while for me actually to make this thing, and which is why I think people respect, and which is why I think people are very cordial, and that's why even this Made in Heaven episode, actually they were so gung ho about making it the best,
Interesting that you named Shailendra, and he was the greatest poet, greatest lyricist, one of the greatest lyricists in India from Dalit background, but he has to hide his identity. There was no surname.
He hid himself in his lyrics. If you go back and listen to his lyrics, you'll know. If you know, you know.
Want to talk about more? It would be very interesting. Yeah.
No, I mean, I actually. No, it feels surreal, to see the most respected lyricist of all time could not claim his identity fully. He could not live his life fully. He has to live, I would say, unfulfilled, because he could never be himself. Yes, his art was magnanimous, but he could never stake claim as a person that he owns up to fully. And to be only known posthumously, and still, I'm telling you, Bollywood doesn't know that Shailendra was a Dalit. His son recently spoke about it. So, like, imagine in your environments, wherever you're working, say you're the only person from that community in all of it. How would you feel working? Like, imagine, okay, say a woman is working in a very male-dominated society, a workplace. There is no single woman. How would you feel? That woman what will she go through? So those are the questions that we need to ask and start. And this whole thing about representation and also trying to understand, it's like sometimes I feel that the onus also lies on Savarnas, because it's your ancestors who've done this. Okay, so don't reach out to any marginalized community and say that, can you educate me about your community a little more? Hey, you're trans, can I know a little more about you? Why don't you put some effort in educating yourself? The onus does not rely on a marginalized person to explain to you, to go through. You have to go through and understand it. If you have to make an effort, because it is your ancestors who've done this, and sort of it's like, it's your shame. You own up to it and make amends. like you're not doing any charity, you're not doing anything well, you're just you're doing reparations for something that, fair, you're not responsible, but at least generationally it has caused a big issue, right?
I think we just
I
have
completely went off topic, but yeah.
2 minutes left. So final question is a personal question for myself. How do I watch a 3-hour film when my mind is corrupted by 60 seconds of reel?
All right. Which is also happening to me, by the way. I wake up, I try to write. Like, it's very difficult for me to write. This is the first time I'm actually writing myself. It's very difficult. I wake up at 4 a.m. and I decide, okay, morning time, I'll be like, nice. I'll play with my cats a little bit, and then I go back and I'm writing and I'm looking at reels. It is unending, and like, you realize that, oh, it's 9 a.m. already. And it's an epidemic of I actually don't have an answer, because I know this is a thing that we'll all have to like be with it. It's, yeah, I can't. You have a solution.
Got to
maybe
do
you would-
pranayam and all these things. Like, you know. Okay, so
I wish.
can we open it to the audience? Yeah.
Like you said, your narrative, politics should not supersede the narrative. So then how do you distinguish between like narrative and, let's say, propaganda? And how do you like it should? Does this statement mean that your politics should be hidden, or it should be implicit, or it should not come out openly? Like, can you just elaborate on this statement, because it's a very interesting statement that you made.
Lovely question. So what I mean to say is that there are certain beliefs that you believe in, but you have to remember that you're making a narrative about characters. Okay, so the character lives in. I may live in a certain cities. I dress up certain different. I have different accent, whatever. But if I'm making a character, it has to be truer to that character. How they speak, what is the lingo that they speak. It cannot be that, okay, I believe in a certain politics, like because of where I come from, what I do, what my belief system is, I might say a line, like say, this whole cancel culture is toxic to queer narratives. Let's say I mean, it's not making sense entirely, but take it. If my character in Masan, say Deepak, says that line in Hindi, you will feel like, okay, this is not Deepak's voice, it is my voice. So then it is politics superseding the narrative. Because Deepak's world is different. Deepak's priorities, problems are different. Even his politics is different. Even if he says that politics, it has to come from that language, or it has to have a certain cinematic language in expressing that. You can't just nakedly say and get an extra star in a review because you spoke about an important thing. It has to come from the world. I hope I've answered your question.
Hello, sir. On one hand, as you said, there is a culture of reel and 30 seconds, while on the other hand, we also have the culture of binge watching, where we sit for 6 hours, 7 hours, and binge watch entire shows. So, what is your opinion on that? Like, is the attention...
Guilty as charged. I mean, I binge watch so much, I can't tell you. Like sometimes, I to feel that I think it's because sometimes reality is like too stark. Like during COVID times, I think to immerse yourself into a world that where also binging, I feel it's also because I've been battling a lot of mental health issues. So it also gives you, tones down my anxiety, because I know that this is only a thing and the killer will be found and justice will happen. So I don't have to worry as much. So that's why I think you binge, because it feels safer. It feels safer to like, I mean, this is a very abstract point.
But it gives me more anxiety. 10 घंटे तक कौन wait करे, कौन killer है पूरा. It's a very anxious, experience. But which is the last good experience?
Would you want that kind of anxiety, or would you want that, is my employer's calling, what do I do? Which is the anxiety? You choose.
But which is the last good binge experience you had in terms of series or something which you really loved, the whole experience?
I can't get over Mindhunter. I've seen all seasons thrice.
So my question is, how do you find a good balance between creative liberty and taking care of the fact that whatever liberty you're going to take should not disrespect any community or any kind of people? And how do you move towards creating a more mature audience that doesn't take everything personally that is represented in the media? Thank you.
Oh, I mean, I'm also seeking the answer for those kind of questions. But I feel, see, to be creative liberty versus how do you present stories, I have one phrase for it. For any community that you want to make films on, that is not yours, is lived experience. You cannot recreate lived experience of someone else's. You can empathize, but you cannot be there. Okay, so the only way that you can make truer narratives, be it gender, sexuality, queer narratives, you have to involve people from the communities. That's only when you'll get the authentic experience. And you have to give them power positions. You can't just say that, okay, put them in a corner, पढ़ लो ठीक है ना सब ठीक है ना एक दो लाइनें बंद कर दो नहीं. No, you have to bring them into like make important changes, suggest like this doesn't work, this doesn't happen. You have to listen to them. You cannot think that, because then it is that whole savior complex that a lot of filmmakers currently also who make narratives on either Dalit or queer narratives, they feel like they have the patronizing gaze that मैंने तुम्हारा उद्धार कर दिया देखो मैंने फिल्म बना दी तुम्हारी कम्युनिटी के बारे में, praise me. No, you are doing it purely out of commerce because
Like Lagan,
you'll get social equity out of it.
like Lagan, Article 15, these kind of films. Yeah.
No comments. The number of hands are increasing with every question.
How much time do you have? It's up. One question, one last question, please.
Okay, she's been raising for quite some time. She's been raising her hand. Grey, yeah.
Thank you, sir, for noticing. Hello, sir. Sir, it must be terrifying being the only Dalit person in the entire industry. And you also mentioned the layers of censorship a story goes through before it reaches the audience. So how do you not feel defeated in that? Do you still see light at the end of the tunnel that one day a filmmaker's true story will reach the audience uncensored? Do you not feel defeated or frustrated by the process?
There is an idealistic answer to that, is that you'll have to go along no matter what happens. You have to go with it. I mean, look at Iranian filmmakers. They are in like police custody, they are making movies. I guess, and also there's another answer to it, is that, there are smarter ways to do it. Because sometimes it feels like you're really taking daggers on. You're really poking at fingers. But I think when you genuinely engage in conversations, I'll give you an example of Gili Puchi where my intent was not to like put down any community, because there are bad apples in every community. No community is a monolith, and there are bad apples in every community. So it was just a bad person. Like this person has been tutored by her mother, by her employer, that ye log sahi nahi hote hain. And she got carried away with that. So you should not come from a point of attacking or tone policing or anything. It should have a genuine conversation where change should come. I mean, I really feel that it should. So, yeah.
But when censor board censors your film, do you go home and say, "Ye dukh kahe khatam nahi hote re?"
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you, guys.
us. Thank you,
Thank
Media
you.
Rammal. Thank you, Neeraj.